Record, so we're ready.
Okay, I'll wait till it's 9 o'clock.
Oh.
It's close.
Never going to change.
I know, I'm watching it, it's never going to change. It's true enough. True enough. Well, I probably just looked at it and it was 8:59, so I'm waiting a whole minute. But I figure, 9 o'clock. I call this meeting to order of the AAC. We have all of our members here except for Greg Holmes, who is in Iowa, who may join us, but he's excused as far as being here physically. He may join us by phone. Otherwise, we have a full contingent. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, do we have any public comment at this time? It's limited to 3 minutes. We also have public comment at the end of the meeting if anybody wants to do it then, or both. Welcome to our public. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Sam, I motion we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Mike Ratliff, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 5, mooring field and staff report. And we have our financial director here.
Yes, so Robert
If you would
Lang.
like to come forward, or to the mic, I guess, wherever.
Rob Lang, your finance director for the town of Fort Myers Beach. Questions you all may have that I might be able to answer. Back to you.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Ted.
I think I need to figure this out later. I appreciate the fact that we're beginning to follow the expenses. I haven't been able to study them long enough to figure them out, but we appreciate that you're letting us have access to that. Unfortunately, the occupancy and the income has fallen behind us. The data from that area has fallen behind, but we appreciate the fact that you're beginning to put together the expense for us, and appreciate that very much.
I appreciate getting the financial report. One thing we didn't get was the occupancy, which isn't, I don't think.
Is part of.
Is it part of that?
I'll say that you all get that. One of the things, talking with Chelsea about y'all's need for, one of the things we're working on. Fortunately, COVID has set us back. We've lost a lot of work time with staff. So not an excuse, just a point of we have to deal with. But it's my intention that we try to break this down and give you a little bit more financial information so it can clarify exactly where you are, so you make the decision you make. If there's any additional data that you all feel you need, this will be a time for us to be able to collect that information so that we can put it into our structure at a more detailed and informative financial record for you. Of course, these are all preliminary numbers as far as audit's concerned, and we'll be working in the next 2 weeks to start solidifying our year end to make sure everything's where it's supposed to be. And if there's any edits to any of this, of course, we'll advise you accordingly. Those will be just fine tuning of things. It should not have any material impact. The auditors, of course, verify that there are no material changes from what we've been showing you. And I'm open to getting the staff need to be able to obligations. Usually our primary role is to provide the town council with financial data as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, in order that been our primary goal, some of the other entities tend to slide down the scale, not intentionally. But we want to be able to with them and then be able to find out what you all need, something for you. But we wanted you to status. Fortunately, you've probably been there, and I apologize to you for.
Question, do we intend to, when we catch up, to continue with the occupancy and income data as we have in the past? We're not changing the format of that.
No, I don't want to change any of the formats. What I want to do is just find out from you all, is there more detail than you're getting now that makes it important for you to make decisions? Not, and what we're giving you is satisfactory, excellent. But again, all systems can be improved with the right resources and the timing, and I'm getting to that point from an organization standpoint to start meeting these needs that you all have expressed. I don't think we have met those needs in past as quickly as you all wanted them, and I'm just saying that we'll be working on that today forward.
From the point of that report that we've had from a long time, that has been wonderful, and I hope we can continue to keep up with that when we can catch up. So the expense, obviously, we need to work together to figure out how it might be broken down. And
And that's part of mine too, because when I look at the reports, I see things that I question. Going to put that together and probably present it to you for a review and see if that's something that helps. If it's not, then of course we won't spend time giving you something that's not necessary. We want you to know that we will be working toward putting some of the financials together that's meaningful. Chelsea's very good about providing a secondary review to see if there's anything we missed or misinterpreted, because we're relying on data coming from various places. We're not out there in the field like Chelsea is, and so there is a point of reconciliation. That please tell us, or through Chelsea, if there's modifications or additional.
Very good. Anybody else have? Thank you so much for coming today and
I'll sit in in case
keeping
you
us abreast of where we are on the, I understand that a lot of things have changed with the situation, but we appreciate your update.
Oh, okay.
All right, so leading on to the staff report. Pump out scheduling has been increased. The enforcement around the island has really been taken note. We're getting a lot more of scheduling outside of the mooring field. That being said, we have about, I believe our last count, we've been doing inventory on the boats west of the bridge. We've got about 22 boats out there anchored as of Monday. We got 4 of them that are sitting on the bottom. 3 of them are up on the sandbar near the island, and then we have 1 on a private property. All these boats have been tagged by law enforcement and have been deemed derelict vessels, and they're just awaiting removal. That being said, we've been reaching out and trying to make moves with the removal of derelict vessels in our area. We're trying to get a better understanding of how the powers that be operate, and with that, we've ran up the chain with FWC and held meetings and gotten access to the FWC database, so we can now go and actually physically look at the status of these vessels and where they're at as of removal. The way it's set up now, Wiesen is now in charge of removal of them. But we're working on ways to speed up the process, especially within our area, to get these vessels removed. We are scheduling more meetings with FWC, Wiesen, Lee County Sheriff's Department, and also DEP. So other than that, we will update you on the situation as far as how that progresses, and I guess the process that takes to get removed. If you do have any questions, please let us know. We will answer them if you have any questions about boat removal and how that process goes. It is a lengthy process, but we'll get into it at another time. Moving on, we've had a piling hit in our east field. The welcome side in the east field was hit. I've got different reports of who or what it was, but nothing's provable. But it's been since been replaced, and it's back up and operable. We've got a couple buoys missing that we're working on getting replaced, just getting GPS coordinates and then the supplies to get them down. They're the special purpose buoys that were permitted at the development of the field that indicate the perimeter of the mooring field. I believe I've got 3 of them missing. I've just got to make purchases and then get the teams in the water to get them installed. Other than that, we've had a boat fire at Salty Sam's that was right on the jurisdiction of the town. We had no effects in the mooring field whatsoever from that boat fire. So it was contained and controlled through Salty Sam's and that entities there. The dinghy intake going on. We've been collecting dinghies. We've gotten a couple out of the wet storage area, especially with these heavy rains. The procedure goes that if you have a boat in our mooring field and you are not physically on that boat, there needs to be a contact within 30 minutes to where we can reach out and get somebody to come take care of this boat. That's typically the case, but sometimes it's not. And when it's not, we'll go ahead, make contact with the owner, let them know the situation, to get their permission to go ahead and extract the vessel without it causing any impact to the mooring field or any environmental impact to the surrounding areas. I've got 3 boats right now in intake that we've collected. We're just waiting on people to come claim them. As of right now, I really don't have a procedure as far as charging or somehow getting reimbursed for this service that we're doing here. So staff is working on paperwork and legalities as far as getting that taken care of to make sure that the town isn't in debt by doing this service. Pennant line checks, we've been going out, especially with the winds and the I guess the storms. We've been enforcing more of the pennant line regimens that we've set forth as far as what we expect when you go out and tie up. The double bridles and things like that. And I know some of the boats have various special circumstances that they prefer tie-ups, but just safety lines and backup safety lines on the bridles and on the pennant lines is what we're looking for now. We did go ahead and purchase a new pontoon boat, and it is up and running. The other one kind of outlived its service life. So we've got it up and it's been in the water, and it will now be the new maintenance boat for the mooring field.
That pontoon boat that we replaced was the oldest piece of equipment other than generators that we had. So, and fortunately our town manager found a really good deal on it. Austin and his crew have been able to get it seaworthy.
Yeah, it's a very nice aluminum craft, very sturdy work hull. Other than that, we've been making motions in bettering the check-in process that we currently have through Matanzas and that situation. So with that, we've all talked about DACWA and going in that route, and I think we went ahead and went that route. And I think Chelsea has a little presentation here to show you what it's all about.
So,
Before we go there, I had a
I'm
couple.
not going into DACWA yet. I've got
Okay.
a bunch of updates.
I had a couple questions on some of the things that Austin was talking about.
If you want to shoot, go ahead.
Hey, go ahead.
I guess I need some clarification a little bit. Because you were talking about boats and dinghies and collecting things, and I am unclear as to what exactly we're doing. You're not talking about collecting the actual boats. You're talking about collecting dinghies that are abandoned.
Okay, so
I'm
and we
unclear.
do have a couple that have been abandoned, I would say. They've just washed up on a shore or whatever, and we'll hold them. Like I said, I don't have a procedure in stone right now of what we're doing with them technically. So, case in point, we have a boat in wet storage that the owner's been out of town for a couple months. Whatever his situation is, he had a dinghy tied up to the side of his vessel, and it filled up with water.
Okay, so he was not on the actual
wasn't on the boat.
But left the dinghy attached. Okay.
Correct. And like
That was what I didn't quite understand.
Yeah. So when you'll go through the field, a lot of the people, they don't pull their dinghies up onto the vessel to get them out of the water. So what they end up doing is just tying them to the side, and with these heavy rains overnight, the dinghies fill up. So they end up going under, the engine goes under, and then we have oil slicks and things like that going on. So when we pull up on a boat that is in this situation before it goes under, we will get contact with the owner of the vessel, get their permission to go ahead and fix the situation or correct it. Typically, we try to pump it out and get it upright again, but it seems to be once these vessels go under, they seem to, I don't know what happens to the inflate or something to where they won't stay afloat. So we have to end up pulling them because there's nobody there to take care of the vessel. So that's becoming an issue.
The other, it's more of a comment on, the mooring ball design, I guess, when you were talking about doing pennant line checks with storms and stuff. Because we went out and mooring ball design now is hard to add extra lines to.
Yeah.
The old design, because we went out to prepare for Laura, well, the old design, we used to put 2 or 3 extra lines and slack them so that if
One
something
fell down.
pulled, then something would catch. Can't do that with the new design because of the way that the pennant goes underneath the ball. Can't do that now to add extra lines onto holding on. You can add extra lines onto the one pennant line, but you used to be able to add extra lines to an actual eye of a ball
Yeah, I
in
understand.
a storm, and
Yeah,
now you
so-
can't do it. It's essentially a comment on the design.
Do you know what's
that we have
preventing,
now.
do you know what is actually preventing you from doing that?
Well, you're gonna get them all tangled up underneath because of the way it's designed. It goes up under the ball.
Okay, so basically we have a swivel problem. All right, what's going on is, you're right on the design, we need to add an extra swivel to the pennants, and I've been talking to the engineer about this, and you'll see that on single bridle lines as well. What's going on is under the water is we have a swivel that's connected the ball and the pennant together as one, and those 2 units are on the top side of the swivel. So in design, those units are supposed to swivel together as your boat rotates. But what we're finding is that the pennant line is binding itself up on the top side of the shackle. And to relieve this, we'll need to add one more shackle, independent shackle, from the pennant line to the top swivel shackle, so that pennant line will swivel independently. You don't get any, and if you go through the mooring field now, these boats that have been in the mooring field for a while, they've been adding swivel shackles through the eye hole of the pennant line, and then they run their bridles through that. And with that relieves any tension going on between their bridle line or the pennant line. So, I mean, that's entirely up to you if you want to use that situation, but we haven't been recommending that because metal on plastic, it will wear that thimble right out and cause wear quicker than anything else. So we've been recommending you run a line through your swivel as well, and then adding a swivel in as a centerpiece of your bridle. I know it's technical and more complicated than it needs to be, but that's pretty much relieves the issue that we have going on with what you say you're having in your own lines binding up on themselves. Correct?
Well, that's part of it, but in a storm situation, we used to add extra lines as backups.
Yeah.
And that, you can't do that now.
Yeah. And like I said, it all falls back on that swivel, because in the
Well,
past,
it's
just.
not just the swivel, it's also the design, because it used to be that you could attach on top of the ball, and now it goes underneath the ball, so there's no way really
Well, I
at it. It's just a
Noted.
comment.
Noted, reach out to the engineer.
yeah.
It was just a comment. I didn't want to get, too far into it.
understand the problem. Oh, and I don't,
We'll talk after.
okay.
Mike Rattler, for the record, if possible, for the next meeting, could you or send out us a diagram of what the actual mooring
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just bring a system in.
looks like that we're using now?
Yeah, we've got
I think if
systems
you
out
had
back,
that-
absolutely.
If you had a schematic or a drawing or something in front of you, it would make it easier, the discussion a bit more meaningful.
Were there any other comments with regards to Austin's before I delve into my lengthy list?
Delinquencies?
I'll tackle that. Okay. We do have 3 delinquencies. I believe those were filed in court last week by our town attorney. So those are continuing through the process. One one of the, up a little bit. So the town has brought on 4 finance interns. And they are here for the semester. They're FGCU students or recently graduated students. So I have had the pleasure of having 2 of them within my department the last 3 weeks. This is the 3rd. They have tackled the mooring field. They are reviewing the L sheet, looking for any errors, following up on any pertinent data or omitted data. One of the main things that I've asked them to do is to start from as if they were a patron. I know Patty and Penny walked them through as if they were a patron, but then also on the back end, Patty and Penny's processes for collecting and signing up patron in the. So they are reviewing from start to finish and documenting that and providing those reports to finance on the processes of collecting money and the revenues and the whole process of the mooring field. So they will be hopefully wrapping that up this week and providing that to our finance director. Anywho, part of reviewing, so I've asked Matanzas every Friday at 3 to send me that week's. We have found where some people are not paying on the 3rd, on the 1st, which is what our submerged land or the harbor management plan says, that everybody must pay on the 1st, otherwise you pay a prorated rate. And so we're working with Matanzas through some of those kinks. If we have, of course, the 5-day, you have a 5-day late window that you don't start, after the 5th day you start to accrue a late fee. Staying up to date on those. We did have a gentleman that was over $100 late. We did pursue. We finally got in contact with him. We did send him a certified letter. Delinquencies are very important because, for one, they owe us money and they're getting a service that they're not paying for. But number 2 is we have our own internal processes that we have to follow. And the 3 large ones that we have right now, we have to post in the office on the vessel. We have to send them a certified letter. We have to do a second letter after giving them a certain time period. So knowing the second that there is a delinquency is imperative because government and we love our processes. So we're working with Kansas on, and again, that's why I've requested every Friday at 3, they send me this list because we need to be on top of this. Part of that is their responsibilities in notifying the town of these delinquencies. I feel like we're working through some of those kinks, but we're making some headway. It seems like pretty much everybody other than the 3 outstanding vessels is in tune with paying on the 1st. So I will jump to, Austin kind of touched the FWC database that we have been able to get into and where everybody stands, albeit the sheriff's office, FWC officers, etc. I know he's been working diligently on getting, we're hoping to be a quarterly meeting with all of these other agencies to figure out the status of derelict vessels or abandoned vessels within the town's jurisdictional limits. That includes FWC, Coast Guard, Lee County Department of Natural Resources, town staff, and myself, and just trying to get everybody on the same page. It seems like we're all trying to accomplish the same goal. It's just we're not necessarily talking. And so Austin's kind of taking the lead on that project. The expansion, which I know is later on, we had 4 letters of objection. 2 of them took back their letters, rescinded them. And so we're waiting on DEP for the final review and hopefully approval of the expansion. Again, Army Corps of Engineer, we're still waiting on the permit from them. I understand that they've had some administrative overturn and staff, and so maybe longer than usual, which is pretty long. So, that's on its merry way. Some good news. We applied for the Florida Boating Infrastructure Grant Program, FBIP, which is the grant that we had received this year. All the years are combined at this point. For the dinghy dock, we had applied for the design for the one at Bayside Park. We were awarded that. I just got a letter of award. It's $12,500, but still, that anything's better than nothing. And so hopefully we'll be executing that agreement and contract soon. I think we ranked 6th of like 30. Intern. The WCIND grant, waiting on the fully executed document back from Lee County Department of Natural Resources. I believe that amount was $50,000, with the town matching $15,000. One of the things I wanted to talk, or at least notify you all, was that the staff liaison for the Marine Resources Task Force Advisory Committee reached out to me, and apparently Murph, of course, has been discussing policies and procedures for derelict vessels and what, if any, policies and procedures we had. I told them, you guys have this discussion, it's part of your purview, but I believe they've been discussing it in length as well. I just wanted you all to know that. With that tropical storm Laura that was impending, we had some boaters that are on the north side of the bridge reach out asking if the town was opening up the mooring field in the event of an impending storm. We'll notify the public, absolutely. We'll push out through social media blasts. At the time, we had not declared it open yet because I believe our submerged land lease or harbor management plan, one of the two, says that we have to be in the cone. And that, I believe I confirmed at the time, but we weren't in the cone at that time because I think they were trying to come into the field sooner than later, which is understandable because they're trying to, get away from the storm. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we'll notify people if and when it opens, knock on wood, that we don't have a storm. And then we're going to meet with Matanzas staff next week. Aqua is live, so you know. The liveaboards we're treating differently than everyone else. Those are going to be sent a contract through DACWA. One of the things we've been working with Matanzas is with DACWA, you have to have an email address that you can communicate with, an active email address. One of the other things that we've been working with Matanzas with regards to the contracts and the patrons is you'll notice on the contract that people sign, it says under like the address section, it says notice and billing. It does not say mailing address. So we have told Matanzas that no contract shall have Matanzas's address on it because it is a notice and billing. And so, and that all goes back to there's a delinquency and we have to send a certified letter and they have Matanzas's address. They're not the owner. So I know that, and I'll walk through DACWA, but just so you know, it is live. We have not pushed it out social media yet because I want to get Matanzas staff trained I believe next Tuesday is what we scheduled. Part of DACWA and your question earlier to the finance director of occupancy, that's the beauty of this system. can run, I don't even know how many reports from it. We can see who was at what ball, et cetera. We can charge pump outs to it. We can, pump out tickets. We can, the list goes on. We are drafting a memo to send out after, so the plan is Tuesday, we have our training with Matanzas, Austin, myself, and then the plan is to send out a memo to the patrons. Austin will go out and send it to them and notify them that they can go on there and you guys can set up an account. You can go ahead. Now the liveaboards, I've gone ahead and got the contracts from Matanzas and I've actually put in their information, the vessel, the length, the beam, their insurance information. I plugged all that in from the contracts only for the liveaboards. Everybody else would be considered transient. Kathy, you all would be considered transient. So you can go on there, you can make your account. Salty Sam's uses Aqua. There's a handful of other marinas locally that use Aqua. So this is not new to our area. But I can go through with you the basics of downloading the app. We're still working out some kinks and stuff, but and if you go on Aqua's website right now and search Fort Myers Beach, you're going to see a beautiful picture of Springfield. So, and you'll actually be able to go on and sign up. The plan is October 1st, no longer doing paper, and we're doing full DACWA. By no longer doing paper, I mean, if you go into the office, you're not filling out a paper. You're going to work with Matanzas staff, and they have a computer, and fill it out online. If that's you saying, okay, here's my registration form, and they can type it in. I want to completely get away from paper. Before I jump into DACWA, is there any question?
If you don't have an email? Be a patron?
You can call and you have to have an email. Because it's the welcome packet, it's reminders, it's notifications, it's if there's an impending storm, I can send a blast email to everybody in the field at one time. You've got to have an email.
Maybe if somebody calls and says they don't have an email, I know there's a lot of services that are like $10 or something you can just get email for.
You can get free email.
Email's free.
Yeah.
It's free.
That's true, you just need to sign up.
Sign up.
Computer, Matanzas, is that a dedicated computer that a
That's-
person will fill in their own information? Or will they
Matanzas
be
staff.
orally giving that?
Matanzas staff will be expected to help facilitate. That is part of their duties as the upland service provider. Which, honestly, if you download the app and you can sit there and fill out your own information on your phone, on your smartphone, or on your computer at home, and then once you're in, you're in. You have your own profile, and then it's just making a reservation to wherever you end up going. Part of that is one of the kinks that DACWA doesn't, they're working on, they know that it's a need of multiple agencies, is you can upload your registration and your insurance document to your own profile. We require it that you have it when you come. So we will be asking for a copy of it, for you to email it to us through DACWA or the own email. But as of right now, it's not one of those where you can't pass go, don't collect $200 because you haven't uploaded this yet. Does that make sense? But DACWA is working on updating that hopefully in the next year or two, to where you are required to upload prior to requesting the reservation. You have to have a card on file, just like at a hotel, you have a card on file. You will not be charged until you come.
$12,500 grant that you mentioned, just for clarity, is that for the expanded dinghy docks there at Bayside? Is that what that's for?
Design.
I know, sure.
Are you ready for me to just show you a quick preview through DACWA?
Anybody worked with DACWA before?
I did, we just had the Key West Marlin tournament at the new Stock Island Marina Village. And, it's a beautiful new marina, all state-of-the-art floating docks, and, it was very easy.
DACWA was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it simple, it was great.
Yeah.
I've already gone ahead and this right. All Florida Marine. Allowed it to know my DACWA. Down the road, if we could code or referral code, we motions that we could out capital letters. Phone number, website, as my arrival. Now, multiple notes on your profile, and whichever one you're taking, that vessel. Part that shows the radiuses of each vessel, so they pre-program and so they know how many are open, at what length, at what, all of that. In there. It's telling me payment of $8 is due. Have it set up, which you have to pay. Charge you the first. Not how I want it set up. I want you to pay. Have a card on file. So I would go down here and I agree. And at this point, I would add my that out, and then it just right now goes to myself, Austin, and Matane. Austin and Matane. Down and dirty of the side of this. cetera. So boards and filling them out month monotonous for typical liverboard. Preference is also the plan regards to plan with regards to security deposits is we will, if you have submitted one, you're good. We've noted it on file. You will not have to resubmit through DACWA. Our finance department is working with DACWA on solving that, but any new ones coming in that pay for a month would require to submit the security deposit through DACWA.
I don't want to go into it now, but there's obviously a different way to pay by week and pay by month.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I don't want to go into that right now, but.
It all depends on the length of time you choose to stay.
Does this imply a reservation? You said that specific balls were in there and their radius. Does it still first come, first serve? Or
It is still first come, first serve, which is why I'm trying to get it set up to where we don't collect payment until you arrive. You can request the reservation. That's until Matanzas hits confirm, it's not guaranteed.
So you request a general reservation, not a ball?
Correct. Your mooring ball assignment will be assigned upon arrival. I believe it says it in there, in the DACWA app. But I highly, highly, highly encourage you all to play with this over the next week or so. If you have a vessel in the field, go ahead. You can sign up for October 1, request the reservation. But we will be transitioning to this. Of course, you know, I've already, to our account manager, I've already spoken to him. Anticipates lots of questions. I know DACWA themselves have pushed out social media that we're live. I asked Jenny, our PIO, to wait until next week, later the end of next week, so that way we can get Matanzas trained, a little bit better trained. All right, now can I jump? Ready? So, as you know, the upland service provider bid had gone to town council. Or you might not know. I believe I've informed all of you. Council kind of put it on hold because they wanted to look at alternatives. Part of looking at alternatives was coming back to you all because the upland services was recommended to be at Bayside Park from this committee. And understanding the wants and needs of the community and potentially figuring out alternative locations for the upland services if we were to take them in-house. As staff, have I just identified some potential locations? I believe I've notified you all of those locations. And I guess at this point, the discussion is with this committee on the upland services. If we want to procure or go with existing facilities.
Are we skipping to the upland service provider then? Or did you want that as?
I just wanted to make note of the history of what's occurred and then where we stand today.
If we're there, I kind of have a statement to make. Get into this. But maybe let's table that to there if we're there. I mean, are we done with the mooring field and staff report?
I hope so.
And so let's, expansion of the mooring field, I think you already gave us that information. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I
So,
do have one question
Okay.
about that. There were 4 letters received,
Yes.
and if I understand correctly, 2 were negative.
All 4 were opposed to the expansion. We held a Zoom meeting with Austin, myself, the coastal engineering consultants, and we invited those who submitted letters of objection. Only 2 out of the 4 partook in that Zoom meeting, so we could further explain what the intent of the expansion was. The 2 that did partake in that meeting, their letters back. They notified DEP and said, nope, we're good with the expansion. So we really only ended up with 2 letters of objection.
Was there a general theme of what their initial objection was?
Didn't want any boats there in general, at all.
There is a huge misinformed thing going on right now. I don't know where it's stemming from or who's dispersing this information, but the intentions of the town and the observations that the town have is, I guess, not known. So as soon as our intentions and what exactly we're observing and recording and why we're doing it is known, we get full support in what we're doing. But the walls we're running up against is misinformation that's out there. And like she said, the 2 that did show up, they've got the right information and they rebuked their letters. The 2 that didn't show up still have letters because they don't have the correct information. So that's basically, I think, what's going on is the misinformation out there of what we're trying to do. And that's why the letters were rebuked, because they've got the correct information.
Yeah, my question was just, general, and it was answered. These are just folks that when they heard of this, they just thought there's going to be more boats out there, and they
Correct.
These are the 2 that are still existing letters, these are stakeholders, just private people or a
They
big-
were within the 500-foot radius. I don't know if they're business owners or residents, but they received the notification as they were part of that 500-foot radius of the expansion that we
Did
had
you
to
say
send.
whether any of them were pink shell?
Pink Shell provided written report of the expansion and gaining control over that area. They did not send that directly to DEP.
That wasn't the person, that was one of the objection ones. Thank you.
other questions on that? Okay, the upland service provider, I just wanted to make just kind of a comment here, and I hope, other people on this committee will make some comments. I kind of was thinking about this issue and where we've come in this upland service provider thing, and I actually, a couple of months ago, went and took a timeline went through all of my minutes, all of my reports to council, everything about where we started and how we got where we are. And the first time that, I think there's been a lot of misrepresentation of what this committee has done in this process and where we stand. First time this came to us was in December of 2018. Chelsea kind of brought the idea about doing this. And through that time, we've been trying to get information about spots, places, and money, because one of the concerns we've had is if it really makes sense for us to do this. And, we didn't really get that information. We went through all sorts of things, and then we were invited to this meeting with CRAB last October to look at the designs for the parks and different things. And that's when we first started thinking, well, Bayside Park, and the big word is if we would take it in-house, that was a great spot to do it. And I did a letter to the council right after that and essentially said that. We brought up the possibility. It would be great if we would decide to do that. I mean, even at that point, we hadn't really made a consensus. We did our strategic planning, and one of the things was making a decision whether we were going to do that. That was in February. I also have a letter to council from that time too, that says, as we're making decisions about Bayside, this decision still has to be made if the town wants to. I mean, we never really said we should do this. We wanted to get information. And then, we were told, well, Bayside Park, everybody wants to do something there. And then all of a sudden, there's a building. And that they took us, they took it to heart that maybe we should look at a building. It was this huge, we saw the plans, and of course, they were beautiful. And then it was put on hold, and a lot of public outcry about it. And in that time, of course, we had some information about maybe Harbor House would have some space that we could purchase. And now we've gone through this, Kansas has done a bid to us to keep it in-house or whatever. I just think, and now we're tasked, again, it's been thrown back to us, well, we need to find sites. It's never been decided that we're going to take it in-house, and it's my personal opinion, the AAC never said to the town it should be. To me, if it's the right place and the right amount of money, great. But, Bay Oaks has been thrown around, and to me, it's not the site to do it. It has no water access. We have to have water access. And our strategic plan says, we want to make it better than it is. We don't just want to take it in-house. If we're going to do that, it needs to be better than what we have now. Said my piece. Does somebody else have something to say about this issue?
Kathy, could I speak next? Do you
Yes.
Just so you know, I take full responsibility that this got thrown back at you because I felt the council was moving forward without you having input. They seemed to be under the impression that their only choice was to do what the bid process had allowed them to do. And we were greatly confined by that because we basically had one bidder. So I felt like council didn't understand that there had been other things discussed, and just because we had moved from one location didn't mean that we were stuck with that one bid that we had. So I take full responsibility that it came back to you because I was trying to slow down where they were, in my opinion, ready to go forward with one choice. We'd only been given one choice, and I didn't think that was a good thing to do at that point. So again, if anybody's unhappy about it, I take responsibility for bringing it back to you.
From the beginning, we have been presented with locations, and these are of high expense and take loans and all this sort of stuff to get it started. My proposal is that if we're going to take it inside, we need a proposal, just like you would present to a granting agency or you would present to a bank, saying, okay, it's going to cost this, we're going to provide these services, it's going to require this amount of personnel, and these are the way we're going to do it, and this is the balance of income and expense. And I can't see that we can go out and select a place and buy it, and we don't even know how we're going to run it. So I don't think this committee is any way possible to recommend a site or anything else until we have a business plan. So that's my position, is we don't have the information to make a decision, and we won't have it until we have a site, a business plan, and some idea of how it's going to work. Now, that's very hard when you've got to go pick a site before you can start, but at least you can put a full business plan together for, it might fit one or two or three sites, and then you can plug the expense of the site in after that. But we really haven't received and have no concept of what it's going to cost and how many personnel it's going to take to supply what Matanzas is now supplying. And in my short view of it, I don't see how we're going to do it anywhere near at the same price. But we haven't seen that information. So I think we need to have a business plan before we even consider taking it in-house. Thank you.
Bob, do you have?
Yeah, I agree with what Ed said. And, my thought process on this whole thing is, whether the town is ready to outsource it or take it back in, themselves. I think what we're really looking at is, the best example is you put it out for bid and there's only one bidder. And I think Mantanzas has done a great job all these years. There hasn't been any really major problems. It was new to everybody. Everybody worked through them. And my concern, though, is what happens down the road in the future? 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 20, when none of us are here anymore. Right now, Mantanzas is a great partner. They've been a great partner, but let's say Mantanzas sells 5, 10 years down the road. Things do change. Let's say the new owner doesn't want anything to do with the town, just like all these other places you put out for bid that you don't hear from. Where does that leave the town? All of a sudden, we've got a mooring field. Maybe we've expanded. Now we've got an expanded mooring field, and there's no place to service the field. So, I think the town is smart in looking to the future. Whether or not it needs to go out now, I guess that's up to council to decide. But I do think you need to look into the future, because when you're only, for all these years having one person interested, that's great, but what if that one person changes their mind the next time it comes up, or they sell, or for whatever reason? That's my general thought on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Kathy was saying about Bay Oaks not having waterfront. I've had a discussion with, and I think Rexanne's aware of it, Chelsea's aware of it, a submerged lease that's owned by Perlman, Pine Tops, that is available for sale. And it extends out, goes from side to side on the canal, extends out maybe 100 feet, also possibly even farther than that. That connects directly to Bay Oaks. I know Bay Oaks is in the middle of a whole redo plan. I'm not sure how much of that's visible with the mangroves there, but it does touch Bay Oaks property. Realtor said he had been talking to other people on town council, and I think Bay Oaks also. I don't know if there's been any discussion or anything moving forward on that or not that anybody knows about.
There's been no forward movement within town staff. There's been no forward movement. I understand that there may be some civil issues amongst that property owner and the HOA of Tropical Shores. The town has no interest in getting in the middle of that.
It does border where the fire department will be, and it does border Bay Oaks. So I
Tim,
just
are you
wanted to
speaking
clarify.
of the piece for the kayak?
Yes.
Yes.
It goes from Tropical Shore, it goes basically from the Tropical Shores seawall around, there it is.
It's that yellow box.
Yeah. And it appears the Bay Oaks portion basically in the mangroves, other than what we already have existing there for the dock. But I just wanted to bring it up that that's just something connected to Bay Oaks that might or might not have potential. It's got
Does
a
that
lot of
have
issues.
anything to do with the email that somebody by the name of Niles Davis sent?
Yes.
Okay.
Have anything else, Sam?
Was it-
Mike?
Well, I guess my thought, feeling of this, I feel pragmatically. I understand the thoughts about, I went through I think there were 5 potential lots. If you think about, and I think you have to think of these things from being, if you were a resident of some of these neighborhoods. I'm not sure that the Bay Oaks thing, the negatives to me is that I don't think the location is that great. I think there'll be some real permitting issues when you get into mangroves, that sort of thing. For me, those are all negatives. In addition to the time frame, starting from scratch, we don't know how long this is all going to take. Virginia Street, I don't see that as a viable option at all. Behind Tops, again, I think that's a location on permitting, and if I was that person on the other side of the canal there, I would probably object to that. So I think we're down to a couple of things. We got two choices as I see it. One is, and going back to what Ted said before I go any further, I think the financial end of it has to be addressed. It seems to me we've got two choices. One, as is, continue to work with our current provider and continue that. But as Bob said, I think there are some issues with that. When we all undertook this originally, as Kathy said, there was no mention directly about Harbor House. So I would just generally say, from my own personal point of view, I think, I'll just say it out. If we're going to take this in-house, it would seem to me that Harbor House is the only viable option, those 5 locations. Now, we can deal with the minutia about if we lease it, if we buy the area, we hire a contractor or a vendor to run it. Those are all minutiae which come later. But we either have to make a decision about this or quit just chewing on it like a dog with a bone, which we have done, as Kathy laid out there for some time. Just from my point of view, I would send my own feeling to the town council. If they're interested in taking this in-house, we're only advisory. We don't make these decisions. And I think Harbor House is the only viable option, along with working with our current vendor. I think we're going to have to do that as well because they've been a great partner.
I'd like to remind you all of something that within the last year has occurred. The town has undertook Times Square, Bayside Park. The original intent of Bay Oaks was just that front parcel that directly abutted Estero Boulevard. Because a advisory committee felt so strong about really redeveloping the entire campus at Bay Oaks, that project blossomed because they had the voice to advise town council. Town council agreed that it should be redeveloped, but although you are advisory in nature, that is just a prime example of how town council heard the wants and needs of one of their advisory committees blossomed. So, the minutia, the odds and ends, administration, that's something that staff, I handle, the town manager handles. But the policy decisions, that comes from council. They have advisory committees, advise them. Now, if they take the recommendation, that's on them.
I agree with, and I'm looking at the 5 situations that we had presented to us from Chelsea. Our problem with Bayside, with potentially the fire station, we don't have water access there. And the kayak launch, because that's essentially what it is, at the end of Gulf Beach Drive.
You said Bayside, you mean?
Bay Oaks, I'm
Bay Oaks,
sorry.
okay,
Thank
sorry.
you, I'm sorry. We'd have too many bays here. We've got to have water access. We just have to. And I watched that meeting on August 17th, and Bill Veach was talking about landing at Matanzas Preserve and walking through the preserve to Bay Oaks. Well, first of all, county owns that, so, I mean, who's gonna walk a half a mile plus that's not upgrading our services. So, and I know Chelsea and I said, perhaps you could something through the mangroves. That's a huge proposition to try to do that, and that's an unknown, of course. And as I was saying, at the end of Gulf Beach Drive, that facility or that dock is land-bound half the time. So it's not currently viable as a water access. I think you also brought up the lots over here. Those are very expensive lots. We're talking, what, 1.6, 1.7 before you even get a building or a dock. So I'm not really sure that that's.
Well, and I want to, you guys aware that whatever option is chosen, if not going with the current provider, there's not the money in the budget. The $10 million loan that we're working to acquire is for Bayside Park, for Bay Oaks, and for Times Square. So that means either funding will have to be acquired through a third party, albeit another loan, dipping into reserves.
Chelsea, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That $10 million included money that originally was allocated to build the building at Bayside Park, which is now not going to be built. I think that we have a recognizable argument to claim part of that money. And if we don't, the Bay Oaks Advisory Committee is going to chew it all up into the Bay Oaks project. So this committee, like Chelsea said, if you come out strongly for something, you might get somewhere. But if we have 5 different opinions, and the council is just going to do what the council does. So I believe that we have an argument for some money. The one thing I would point out about Harbor House is it's a condominium association or some kind of association. If we buy that property, we are going to have the ongoing, I think Chelsea said $400 and some a month fees that go with it. So that's not the same as if we use Bay Oaks where we would have no ongoing cost, etc. So just to point that out.
And again, where this all stemmed was the renewal of contract with Matanzas and bidding it out. So in the timeline for that. So the existing contract has one additional 1-year renewal in November, which will go to town council for either approval or denial. And this time next year, if council chooses not to go with the existing tabled RFP that was put out, then we're going to have to bid it out again.
Well, to finish before I know there are issues to look in at Harbor House. That talked about a load-bearing wall and finding out, and to actually have a bid of what it would cost to buy it. We don't actually have that, or do we?
I do.
Can you share that with us now?
I prefer to talk to you one-on-one.
Okay.
I can talk to you after the meeting.
I missed the meeting last time. What exactly is Harbor House? So like the Bayside Park thing is out?
Harbor House
and we're
is the
just down.
condominiums there where Dockside used to be. And it's where
Where the
the
sandpaper
sandpaper
offices
office
used to be.
was.
Across the street from like Nervous Nellie's
Yes.
building, okay.
Bottom floor.
It's bottom floor, couple of units in the bottom floor. And I think you should have gotten an email, this was a couple of months ago, I think you sent this out, that had the plan
That was from Doug's Variance.
from Doug Spear Smith, and had the plan of this was a little, because we're talking about adding another unit to that, is that correct?
Actually, depending on the recommendation of this committee.
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is the one side, but potentially we would
Okay,
add.
I got it now, thank you.
There's multiple property owners involved.
Right.
I don't see any way that in the next month, we can make any kind of decision about what to do. I agree with everybody saying that Harbor House is the only one that's centrally located and so forth, and I would be uncomfortable in the other options, so I would not be uncomfortable with the Harbor House options. So is there not a reason we couldn't make a plan, given the data we have, and say, okay, this is what it's gonna cost, is it feasible to say yes or no? And I would hope that we could go from that route and say, okay, and we have a total business plan, what it's gonna cost us, all these different things with Harbor House. And let us look at that and say, okay, we recommend that and we push it and we will look for the money and so forth. Or we can say, no, that's twice the expense to the town that we have with our upland provider now. We ought to go with our upland provider now for another X number of years and we plan to find a better option. So I think we could come down on that one location and figure out how it would work, and then we might be able to make a very strong recommendation to do it. That's just from one point of view.
I agree with Ted on, and also with Mike, and looking at Bay Oaks, Virginia Street, Tops. Me, as a resident living on the island, I think sort of commercial type thing should be kept in a commercial area, and I agree, that leads us down to two options, Harbor House or as is. That's my opinion.
I had a question for Rexanne, just to backtrack a little bit. I watched the meeting, but I wasn't sure exactly. The verdict was Bayside to the side. Did that mean put Bayside, the entire park to the side, or our portion, or just?
We're doing all new plans, which basically completely exclude doing anything with the mooring field at that location.
Doing like a 30% with something different than us?
Yes.
Passive park is the direction that I was,
I didn't hear.
That's
passive
pretty much
park.
disqualified at this point. That's,
The majority of council believes that the public does not want mooring field office in that location.
that's what I got from it. I wasn't sure whether it was nothing, but it's just different, excluding us.
If I may, I'd just like to bring up the fact of what's actually going on Fort Myers Beach as far as development and advancement of what's going on as far as the businesses here. We just had one of the state-of-the-art boat storage marinas put in our area, first of its kind. We're getting Margaritaville, I believe, is scheduled to be coming up. What staff recognizes is the demographic change that's going on the island. We're no longer, the Fort Myers Beach we used to be, a small fishing village, the Lani Kai hotspot of what we used to be. The businesses are growing. Everything around us is growing. All right. We're stuck in the middle of that in our mooring field that has been the same since it's been developed. We're running on the same programs that has been in place since it's been developed. Everything around us is changing. Everything is going digital. We're trying to keep up with what we're doing now. 10 years down the road, I believe that's where we need to set our sights. We've all had our strategic planning session back in January and February where we all sat down and set goals for our mooring field and where we expect our mooring field to be. Now, me as a harbor master out there every day, I do see these problems, and I will admit I am a fuel behind pushing a lot of these solutions because of the problems that I am experiencing today. Within the facilities that we're running now, we're still on turnkey, brass keys things, and then with the situation that we have now has brought up a thing that we're going to have to brace for the future as well, whether we get hit with another pandemic or anything like this. The mooring field needs to advance. We need to think about the future and where we're going to be in 10 years and where this island is going to be and how our mooring field is going to fit into that island. And then not only that, the vessels coming into this area to utilize our waters. And what we're presenting our island as is those newer vessels come into this area to utilize the newer facilities that everybody else is offering. I'd like you to keep that in mind in what we're doing here. Go and tour other mooring fields. See see what they have, see the services they provide, and see how we can match that and be on a competitive level of what's going on around us. That's one of the big issues behind what I'm trying to do here, and all of these solutions that are coming they're solutions to solve problems down the road. We're basing a lot of our information off of what's going on now. I don't think our mooring field will ever do any worse than we're doing now. We're keeping it up. The numbers that we're turning now, I believe, will only go up with whatever we do. We're not going to be attracting any more of what we used to do with derelict vessels coming into this area. We're initiating now to clean up the area in ways that we're welcoming better class of boaters to this area. Now, with that all comes in mind with what we provide to the public. That's going to dictate what kind of public comes to our area, right? So, like Mike said, we can stay on this status quo. We can continue to battle the same problems and have these same discussions over and over, or we can just change it all and fix it for the future so we can have a better running mooring field for everybody. Not only us, but the residents as well. I keep in mind with everything that I do that I am a public servant and work for the residents and the public of this town. So with that, everything that we're pushing here is to better the town and how we present ourselves to the public. So just keep that in mind in the decisions that you're making of where we're going to be in 10 years. All right? Thank you.
You think that the Harbor House option might fit in your view?
With the facilities that we're running and the feedback that we have gotten from that area already and what we've wanted to develop, I believe it's not. I believe there are other options out there. I believe we're closing ourselves in on this five that you see, but there are limited options out there that we can create, we can facilitate, and we can go with. I've toured with Diversified. I've toured with Gulf Marine, who is redoing their entire property. Everything is being renovated over there into upper class because it just got bought out by the same, I don't know what you know about that situation, but it's been bought now and it's being renovated to start bringing in better vessels. Right down the way, there's only one like that marina in the world bringing in that kind of vessels to this area. So as far as I would just say expand the creativity a little bit and what we're actually able to do as a town in bettering it for the residents and the people coming to visit. And I know that the residents is a big concern in what we do, but keeping them in mind and informed in everything that we do will prevent a lot of the problems that we're facing now.
Well, we haven't seen this, therefore, me, that's something new.
Like I
What-
said,
Let me, please. Put out a bid. One responded. That opportunity was open to
Everybody, yeah.
Disney World.
Yeah.
Disney World didn't bid. Okay? But Harbor House, we could make it work, yes. But like every option, it has its pros and cons. Like Vice Mayor said, there's HOA fees you have to pay. You have to be a part of a condominium association. You don't necessarily have 100% full control. There are rules and regulations you have to abide by. Own your own property, it's your own property. So that is something, we go back to Mike's original comment, is in or out. That's number one, in or out. Number two, okay, I'm gonna use the beach water utilities, parking enforcement. 5 years ago, those were outsourced because the town felt that they could save dollars, perhaps have more control, provide a better service, opted to take those in-house. That's where we sit right here. Is can we do it more cost efficiently? The answer may be no. But a committee or this town perhaps has never fully assessed the option of taking it in-house. And that's why I brought it to you in 2018. Because we need to make sure we're providing the due diligence to this community, because this operations is being subsidized by the general fund, which essentially is a slew full of taxpayer dollars, parking fee revenues, all kinds of additional revenues. I feel that that should not be the case. I see other marinas, I see Sarasota, I see Key West. Yes, we cannot profit money, but we can reduce our burden to the general fund. And that is my intent. And however we do that, that is my end goal. Because that's being a good steward of this community.
That's very interesting. We've been trying to find out how much funds are being added to us from the other sources for the last 5 years, and we don't have any idea of what that is.
But I don't know that's completely true, because you know how much revenues are being brought in from Matanzas. So we have that, and we know the total bottom line audited numbers for maritime in general. But we know how much revenue the mooring field is making right now. We know that the expenses are far more than the revenue right now.
For whatever reason, it just seems like, yes, it's a good idea to bring it in-house, but we need a viable plan, and the one we have now is apparently not viable. So can we find one that is? I think things that have been said about what we need to do are great, but how do we do it? And I think I'm hearing that we should say, we're gonna do it no matter what. I'm not sure that's anything easy to push real hard. We need something everybody thinks is viable and push that. And that's my.
Well, and that was part of me calling each of you and telling you of the locations that we have identified within the month and a half since the upland service bid was pushed out. So, and been talking about this for 2 years. And if we haven't come up with something at this point.
Well, we have been trying to get, to your point, we have been trying to get a plan of how much it was gonna cost, and we've never gotten that. And I was glad to see Mr. Allers the other day in the meeting say, we need to know this, whether we should stay with Matanzas or it makes sense financially. We've never gotten the numbers of what it's gonna cost to take in-house.
I can tell you we've done rough numbers, and I believe the town manager has voiced this to the council, is that we can roughly do it. Not necessarily if we bought something up in the forefront, but operationally we can, at the same cost right now, we could handle it. That we pay Matanzas, that we could, it would be.
And that would not include the investment. The investment would be separate. That would be the running expenses.
That is something that depends on what you pick. Is it $1 million? Is it, 300,000? Is it, 5 million? That kind of depends.
It's sort of still a pig in a poke for me, but I think we need to do something, but I'm not sure what it is we're doing.
Well, we've sort of gone around this several times, and what I'm hearing from, correct me if I'm wrong, of the options we were given, Harbor House is the only option. It really works because it's the only option that has water access across the street. I mean, the other ones don't have a canal that the people can get to.
Well, and Kathy, and if the overall concern or comment of this committee is that we want to stay status quo as is, I will stop pushing the subject. I will stop pushing the review and analysis.
Well,
That is what we're saying.
I know, and I think the whole committee knows, we need more facility. We have 2 restroom facilities. We need more than that. I mean, I don't think there's any argument with that. And how do we do that?
Well, let's ask the question. Is the current, the 2 facilities that we have, is that sufficient?
No, and we've said that all along. It's not sufficient.
And comparing that to Matanzas alone, compared to Harbor House alone, would we, even with the expansion of the field, would we have enough room at Harbor House to meet the accommodations? Or would we have to do some kind of hybrid to get enough facilities, restrooms, and this?
I believe that was addressed in Sarah Bay Hotel's bid about the potential of both or none, like combination. I believe that was addressed in their.
For them to continue in servicing.
I can, Sam, and you might be able to, pound on this, but what I took away from the council meeting was that if we're investing town dollars, they felt that we should be investing in ourselves, not a third party.
That was the general.
Kathy?
Yes, go ahead, Rexy.
Thank you. I just want to put back on the table the idea of Bay Oaks and not necessarily Sam's idea, although I don't discount that completely. Everybody seems to say it's impossible to create water access there. Bay Oaks is surrounded by water, and although you would have to do some permitting to open up a small passageway through the mangroves, that's not impossible to do. I keep seeing people getting permits right and left. They're chopping their mangroves down when I go out in my kayak, and when I check into it, yes, they've received a permit to alter the mangroves. So I don't see, it seems like everybody's giving up on the Bay Oaks idea without us investigating it the same way, in the same depth as the other options have. And I just want to put that out there, that I wouldn't take Bay Oaks off the table. It's currently being looked at for a complete redo. There's not a more perfect time could be happening. I mean, the chances of these two things happening at the same time are just phenomenal to me. And I would hate to completely discount it at this point without looking into it a little further.
Well, and also, just on the forefront, something Austin and I have noticed with the Harbor House one, in any option that's chosen, going away from Matanzas, they provide a service that we would have to make up somewhere else, and that's simply storing our pump out boat in the water. That's a minor, that's not a big issue. You know, we could pull it each day and put it in each day. We've got the ramp, access to the ramp. We could find alternative locations. That's my point, is there are pros and cons to every single one that I told you all about. So, and like Roxanne said, one of the Bay Oaks one is, okay, we'd have to pursue DEP permits and mangrove trimming. And they charge plenty of credits, trust me, I know. You can most of the time make it happen, but they're gonna charge you a fee. Make you replace in kind elsewhere on the property.
It would have a lot of advantage as far as parking, facilities.
We're looking at building new
located.
buildings there now. To add this to it seems like a logical thing to look at to me.
It actually is a very central location. Not for Times Square, but it's a central location for the Anchorage.
And the pool is there.
For the Anchorage, it's not a central location.
Probably more so than
You
the
think?
Kansas. Well, once we expand
Kind
into
of on
the
the
north.
eastern end of it. Or the other one is on the western end of it, so it's kind of,
Well, it would be more, current would be more in the middle once,
If the expansion occurs.
when and if that's done.
We can get the permits, but it's council direction to actually pursue the funding of it.
What does the council want from us, Rexanne? I guess that's my question.
Well, I would love to see strong input, cohesive input. I don't feel that that's necessarily going to happen because I'm seeing a lot of divergent opinions. But you can always craft a motion to say, we would like to advise town council that we would like to look further into taking this in-house. And these are the two most viable locations that we see, for example. Without taking a firm position, you can say, we would like to investigate this further. I have to agree with Bob that I'm very concerned about the future. And we've only got one person who keeps giving us a bid. You know, right now there's a lot of turnover on this island of people selling properties and businesses and things. They might not be there tomorrow. So my feeling is it would be good to move forward. I keep trying to not do this. I have a hard time restraining my opinions. You are the advisory committee, and I think council wants to hear from you what your advice is. And like I say, it doesn't have to be so specific. You don't have to come to us and say, yes, we want to take it in-house at this location. You can say, yes, let's look further at taking it in-house, and these are what we think are the best locations, for example. That would be my suggestion.
Mind you, you meet once a month.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I take your comment there, and I have, just from thinking back when the kayak launch was built, because we were told, oh, the mangroves can't be trimmed, we can't, it's just gonna be a nightmare, it's gonna be very, very expensive. I don't know how far that canal would have to be done
It's a privately owned canal.
from, no, I don't mean at the end of Gulf Beach. I'm talking about, if we're talking about putting something through to Bay Oaks.
Like digging it out.
So you have, again, pros and cons to everything. Towards the rear of Bay Oaks is preserve, so it's county owned.
Right.
On the other side, you do have mangroves, but that canal is privately owned.
Right.
So we can do it. We either do an interlocal with Lee County and see if they're even open to us doing a path through the preserve, or we do the permits. They both need permits, but do the other one and connect to a privately owned canal. Has had some hiccups in the last couple of years, but
Well, that's,
I'm not real knowledgeable about depths, water depths and things out there, but isn't there a part of Bay Oaks where we could build a long dock out to the deeper water through the mangroves without a canal?
it would have to be through the county side, through the preserve.
We don't have any, that whole backside, none of it belongs to us. The preserve goes all the way around. And I've seen the Bay Oaks plans, they're not showing that.
We have right of way back there, but the actual, it's on LIPA, it's the entire preserve is county. We don't have any directly, other than the tropical shores or Gulf Beach roadside, there's water.
well, that to me is a real downside of, and we have no knowledge of what it would take. I mean, I guess if we're going to even consider that, we have to have some knowledge of what we can do there, because we have to have water access.
And the minimum standard would be 12 feet deep during low tide with floating docks.
Right, I mean, so I guess if we're even gonna consider it, we have to have some knowledge about that. And Harbor House is the other place. I mean, those are the two that could possibly be. But there's a lot of things to answer with that, with Harbor House too, so.
Like what?
Bob brought up a great point about Harbor House is a condominium association. And how much of a vote do we have, and what are the current rules and regulations?
Those are some questions.
Because they can change with the vote.
And those were the exact same questions I requested of Harbor
They changed
House.
drastically.
And have you gotten answers?
Not yet.
They changed drastically, and we could do nothing about, if we bought in there and we're a 2%, 3%, or whatever we are, we're not the majority, and
And there's pros and cons to every site.
that could be a major issue. I don't think the maintenance fee is as much an issue as the rules and regulations. And
Yeah.
I wonder if we could get out of the weeds and go back to the general. That is, we really feel as a group that we need to do something because the present facilities available through the upland provider are insufficient, and we must do something. To get back to at least the general, that we feel that the present situation is inadequate and it is going to become more inadequate in the future, and something has to be done. Therefore, we would like the idea of making the recommendation that something has to be done, and we're looking for ways to do it. We haven't found the right one yet, but it has to be done. Now, the question is, we're not going to get it done this year, but we need to tell the council that it's got to be done. And if we start from that perspective and say, this is what we've got so far, and it's really not really looking good, we've got to find something to get the situation corrected, because what we have is inadequate. I think we suggested our council member that we need to tell the council, we really gotta do something. And, whether that's taking it in-house, I mean, that's the only other option than what we have, as far as I know. And what we have is inadequate, so could we make that support to the council that something's gotta be done?
That was a long motion, Ted.
Ted, would you like to?
Would you like to make a motion?
I don't have the words, I make physics, so somebody else has gotta make the motion. If
Would you
that's
like
what
to
they
set
want.
the
Bob, you had a
criteria?
comment.
With what Ted said, I think, and it's my current belief that everybody on the board believes that, in the future, we need to be looking at the future. And that's going to involve taking it in-house at some point. And it's always better to own your own land and control your own destiny. So, question is which option is that going to be? And with Ted's remark, I do think that's probably what I would suggest also, is that we back to the council and give them what our recommendation is and go from there.
In order to do that, we're gonna have to set our basic criteria of, like we did before, what our priorities are and our minimum needs. Stuff that came up today that's, where do we keep the boats if we went up,
And part of that is operationally, that's for Austin and I to figure out. But I wanted to keep you in the loop that every choice that was provided, there are pros and cons.
But we definitely need to set minimum criteria that are gonna be acceptable under any circumstances.
Well, we already know what those are. Those are dictated by the submerged land lease. We have to provide showers, water, laundry, showers, bathroom, laundry, water. And then everything else is, and trash, everything else is additional amenities requested by the patrons thus far. Ice, of that nature.
Well, it's gotta be accessible, obviously. But, a dinghy.
How far does
Also, I
the
think
motion go? Is it stop at, we have to do something?
Well,
Or do we
the
have to
motion
put on
could,
something?
the motion, I can make a motion. We asked the town we want to explore taking it in-house because we have to expand our facilities. And we want to say the two places to look at now are Bay Oaks and Harbor House.
Maybe we should recommend it, but leave it open-ended.
And I don't know what we've accomplished here, to be perfectly honest about it. We've been holding these discussions for some time now. And I understand the reticence, because I have a lot of it as well. But if we're simply going to say back to the council, we don't, what we're really saying is we're not making a decision.
I will say that I don't think it's clear to the council that this group is definitely in favor of continuing to explore taking it in-house. They don't seem clear about that.
Last meeting, we were looking at a brand-new building at Bayside. So that's kind of the direction we were all looking at.
Right.
And a tunnel vision to that.
There are other issues here, like, for example, let's say we would do the Bay Oaks option. What is the timeline on something like that? Is that 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And what do we do in that interim period?
Well, and
And how much is the investment overall? I mean, I'm just asking these as questions because it seems to me, just as like with the Bayside thing, the moment we begin to build our own buildings, it would appear to me that the investment's going to be a great deal more.
Mike, to answer your question, if this were to be in-house, we know we have a deadline. We know we only have one more renewal with Matanzas.
But will there be in 1 year, if we were to go the Bay Oaks option, just an example, what physical plant will be there?
That's part of, once that decision is made to take in-house, that's part of getting a design team on board, designing 30, 60, 90, 100, go out to bid. And those things have set timelines. At least 30 days bid. You have to give the design team That's why I emphasize the timing with this. I mean, again, Matanzas and Doug, they have been more than vocal that they're willing to work with the town, and meet whatever needs that we have. But I mean, that's kind of, manager apparently wants to.
No,
No.
a year is not realistic. The question I heard was, could it be done in a year? Answer is no.
Right. So what do we do if I'm a voter that comes in here in 2022 and the building is, the physical facility is not there?
I don't think we have said that we're never going to contract with Matanzas again. We have 1 year currently on renewal. We could ask them for another year.
That's what I'm asking. What
Yes.
are our options during that interim period?
We could
We
explore that.
have to provide those amenities.
Exactly.
We will,
Regardless.
one way or the other.
Yeah, just so the committee's aware, the staff and myself have been talking about, we believe Matanzas will continue to provide the service as it currently is if the committee and the council decides it's in the best interest to move in another direction. But we've also discussed internally sort of our fallback plan. For some reason that were not to happen, I really don't want to go into it because I don't want it to somehow become the coverage in it. We just hope Matanzas would continue to do it for the fact that we have this ongoing relationship with them, and it would be best not to have 3 changes, just to have, one change from Matanzas to whatever we ultimately go.
Are you saying there's a safety net in?
Well, it would be a way to continue to provide service. It wouldn't be the optimum situation, but we would find a way to continue to provide the basic services for some reason if Matanzas were to walk away. We were moving towards something else. Again, our preference wouldn't be to have a sort of a 3-stop deal. It would be to continue what we have and then move to whatever we move to and not have an interim stop if manage it.
And we move forward and say, yes, we want to do it, but not yet have a plan of how we're going to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, in all reality, where we are, we're basically a year or so ago, where, we were sort of discussing these same issues. I think someone mentioned that before I walked in the room. So, committee made a recommendation. That recommendation, once it got to the council level, there were some questions and concerns, and it fell off the table. So now it's back to you to see if there's an alternate recommendation you would like to make. I heard from my office you're discussing 2. I think the vice mayor's point is very, very important. I would definitely recommend to you all to make a separate motion of that regard to it, of moving it to in-house or not. So that's very clear, and there's no confusion in the council's minds what your recommendation is there. Then a second one as to location, and I would say location A is our preferred location and location B is our backup location. That way it's crystal clear to everyone involved as your recommendation moves forward to town council what your recommendations are, if you're ready to make those today. And we can get that to town council, they can opine on it, hopefully endorse your recommendations, and then staff can be engaged to move forward and start implementing them.
If we are not comfortable with our present options and we make those recommendations, can if a new site is found, can that be changed? In other words, if we say.
Of course, but I would say this, if you're not comfortable, don't make a recommendation yet. If it's not well supported by the committee and, you're pretty sure you're right in terms of where you want to go to, then, we've already gone forward and had a backtrack. I really don't want to do that twice. We spent money that, is out the door, will never be recovered on the first option. Fell by the wayside. So let's try to avoid doing that again. No guarantees in life, but let's try to avoid doing that again.
Roger, how do you feel about tackling the obstacle of having water access to Bay Oaks? And
I think,
any
in my
potentials?
opinion, I think it's going to be a substantial challenge, to be honest with you. But it isn't the first time that, we faced a substantial challenge, and we continue to grind on it, and we try to find a solution. And if we can't, we'll be the first ones to admit that we tried, but we couldn't. But it's not as straightforward as finding an existing waterfront property with existing water access. You're theoretically possibly going through a mangrove, you're possibly to go through a privately owned canal is another route. I mean, there's some significant challenges there.
We did move away from our current location, we still would have a dinghy dock under the bridge. That's gonna be a public,
Yes.
It is a public.
that is a public dinghy
It's not.
dock forever. And if you do something at Bayside, that will be a public dinghy dock forever.
Right, I mean, well, forever is a long time. But to the extent that whenever it gets in disrepair, don't forget, when we say stuff, we're saying stuff as, from a staff perspective, but just remember, everything we do goes through council. So let's just fast forward 10 years and a dinghy dock downtown gets in disrepair. We're going to go to council and say, it needs to be repaired, should you repair it? We believe that they would say yes, but we don't know that because we don't, A, know who's going to be on council and know what other priorities and concerns they may have at that particular point in time. We're speculating, but we believe that they would.
We may not be here.
I can tell you in 10
Maybe
years,
somebody
I
else.
won't be- in 10 years, I won't be here talking to you guys other than from the back seats. All right, is there anything else I can answer? But I think it would be really helpful to be specific and be definitive if you're ready to be definitive. And if you're not, the world will not fall off its axis if you take another month and think about it.
I would like to make a motion that we continue to explore taking it in-house and try to get some information about financially how that will work. That makes sense? And we've been trying to get some of those numbers.
Well, your motion and then open for discussion. Or ask for a second and then open for discussion.
Explore taking it house, gaining information about financial information about versus not having it in-house. I didn't want to put like these places, but it might make a difference on that too. I don't know.
Add to that, and technical information, because.
Well,
financial and
information
technical.
about.
I can tell you with that motion, I have no idea what you're asking from me.
Okay.
Can I try one? I'm not real good at motions, but the motion be that, first of all, we see that it's going to be necessary to take it in-house. We have some options now, which are, and list them, these should be further investigated along with any other options that the staff can find. But we absolutely must, as soon as possible, find a suitable option to take in-house that is what we want to do, and these are the options we have.
What are these? You have to be very detailed.
Harbor House and Bayside, are those the two?
Bay Oaks.
Bay Oaks are the two we presently have, and those should be pursued with the idea of finding out whether they're feasible or not. And at the same time, any other options that can be found should be included, but we definitely have to proceed with the idea that we're going to do it.
That's a
Yeah,
big
a
motion.
really long motion.
Okay, well, like I said, I'm not good at words. Bob?
Two motions that's been
Yeah,
said.
I agree with Ted. I think a motion should be made that we are suggesting to the council, recommending to the council, I should say, they do consider taking this in-house, and especially for future reasons, and that we've identified so far, we've narrowed it down to Harbor House and Bay Oaks. And that we, are open for other suggestions, but we would like to know some cost involved to see how that would weigh against keeping it as is.
Second?
Thank you.
Or any discussion?
Motion back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think I got it.
The motion would be that the Anchorage Board is recommending to the council that they do consider taking it in-house. And we've identified a few places and narrowed down to Harbor House or Bay Oaks. We're open for other suggestions. But as a board, we would like to know some cost involved in those locations, those two locations of what we'd be looking at in order to bring it in-house.
Aside from cost, maybe other challenges
Oh,
too.
yeah, I'll add on to that, and other possible technical and physical challenges as far as mangroves, water depth, use of the canal, that sort of thing.
Got the ad in them?
Is that clear?
I got,
Mud.
yeah, no. So
I-
basically you want us to take our in-house financial projections and put them up against the cost of operating out of each one of these facilities, correct?
Well,
I got it.
The operating out of, I mean, what's it gonna cost to actually do this?
Overall,
Yes.
but in.
I mean, just to be, I read, for example, that one of the units there at Harbor House was $175,000 was the asking price. I don't know whether that's a viable number or not. But these are the kind of specific things that we need to have so that we can make a decision, so the council can make a decision ultimately. But, we need to know these kind of numbers. Is the addition that, or is this all going, for example, in Bay Oaks, will that all be wrapped up into the existing budgeting for that? I mean, so we need to know.
well, and aside from all the
People's
money
dollars here.
too, as we've discussed today, about being able to actually get to Bay Oaks by water, can we do it? And so,
So let me,
One other thought. If we do Harbor House, yes, we're gonna have to buy something. Theoretically, we could sell it. If we put a whole bunch of money into some other area, we're stuck with it. So if we bought that, and 5 years down the pike, we had to do something else, we could at least get our investment back out. If we wanna do something now, we could do that even if it's not adequate, and then plan from that point on, because we could retrieve some of our investment.
And Ted's right, that would be a known cost, it wouldn't be like you'd have some remodel work, but you could always sell the condos again.
Chelsea, you had something?
I can recap what you're asking. I hear your direction that you're taking to council, the motion. What you're asking of staff regarding this, I'm hearing want data to compare to our existing cost of Matanzas, contracting that. You want to be able to compare that to procurement and building of Harbor House, as well as a comparison to Bay Oaks and building amenities there. You want the pros and cons of each option, any hurdles that we may have to overcome if selected. Clear? Am I clear?
I believe so, yes.
Summarize it quite well.
Right, we've got homework. So
go
you
ahead.
would like this for your next meeting?
Need to vote.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, we need to vote.
second to last
Yeah.
version.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay,
If
so
possible.
you would like this for your next meeting if possible?
Possible. Or at least some of it.
I will do my best.
Yes, I know.
Jason, who was with Public Works, has been promoted to the contracts manager, so
So he's not working with you anymore.
he is, but he's not.
Yeah.
But you'll see the gentleman behind me, Randy from Parks and Rec, graciously helping me out right now, hopefully filling Jason's position. So we will do our best to get that to you in time for your next meeting.
Understood.
Yeah, I think, you
Another
know,
item.
generally, it's a matter of, okay, if we do Harbor House, it's gonna cost X. If we do this, we believe it's gonna cost X, you know, just, we
Well,
need some sort of
And
idea.
also with the procurement of Harbor House, that number is only on the table for so long. Keep that in mind.
I have another issue I'd like to discuss, if we might, not really an issue.
Is that to do with this?
Well, it's sort
Or
of
is it a member
indirectly
item?
related.
Okay.
And first I'll put it in a form of a question. The piece of property that I think you sent us an email out that was outlined in red where the kayak is,
That's what Sam was talking about earlier, yes.
right? My understanding, that piece of property is for sale for $55,000. I would like to put this in a form of a motion that at that price, that the town purchase that.
Can I make a
The
comment?
reason I say that is that a potential place for docking pump out boat?
I alluded earlier that there may be some civil issues.
Right.
I would encourage that some due diligence be done prior
Right,
to
that's fine.
looking at procuring that. Make sure that has a clean title. Appraisal. Bob, you can go further into the whole realtor process. That's not my purview, but a clean title would be important. And I don't know that, again, staff has not pursued this at all by any means. I know Sam sent the email to I believe the mayor and vice mayor, I'm not sure. And know the town manager's aware of that. But I know that, again, there's also been some civil
Well, assuming
disputes.
assuming it's clean, I think it's advantageous for the town, anytime we get an opportunity to procure waterfront property that we own, I think that's a good thing for the town, because it gives us options in the future for
Well-
different things.
I would think the option for that is you could build out the existing dock we have there. If you owned that land.
And you could get into deeper
But you
water.
don't know, I mean, you don't know for sure. But if you could, that would be access to Bay Oaks.
Roxanne
But
had
there's a lot of ifs in that, I realize.
Roxanne had a good point on this, discussing was that even though the submerged land lease goes all the way appears to go all the way to the seawall, still have to get onto that water somehow, either from where the dinghy dock is now, kind of crosses over the existing road. I'm not sure what your access issues would be.
Perhaps
If you
at
had
the
that.
end of the canal,
Yeah,
or the
like you can't
seawall.
just walk off the seawall, because that's owned.
Well, you'd have to build
part
a
of
dock up
tops.
at the end of the seawall.
Yeah,
But-
but actually stepping on to it. Oh, if you did a boardwalk at the end of the seawall, then you only need very little.
You might have a step down.
there
It
a
actually may just come right from the road
Well,
at that point, but that would be an issue.
Mike's motion is asking for us to look into if it's viable to purchase.
Yes.
That what your
Yes,
motion is?
exactly.
Did the motion include the clean title?
Absolutely.
Okay, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Or anything further on land service provider? That was
Regarding that, I can internally do some due diligence. Finding clean title, that costs money. Right now, we're at the end of fiscal. We're not allowed to do any other than emergency purchases. I don't know that I have the funding in the budget for next year, but I can do some due diligence internally and see what I can come up with. And perhaps you all might be able to do a little due diligence on your own.
Essentially, we just kind of want to look at it
Yeah,
a little
I mean,
further.
I just think it's
Not necessarily
something,
spend money to do it.
no, what, absolutely, but it has to be a clean title and,
It was that put in my monthly report for Public Works, goes to town council as well. So the council, if they haven't gotten it already, will be or has been notified of it in the mooring field section.
I think that brings me, oh, well, okay, if we're done, strategic plan review, maybe we can shelve that. Want to? You want to review the strategic plan today? Anybody have any? I know that you set some dates
Again, well,
back.
if we continue to table, we'll just have to push some dates back, which is fine. It's not a problem. Again, trying to work through some staffing issues right now. So I'm here to serve you all. So it's whatever you choose
Do
to
you have
do.
any comments about it at this point? I just went through it and noticed
I
we
went through it.
moved some things back. I think we all need to take a look at it. I need to, because I was doing some other things with what we were doing today. Because as I think I've always pointed out, it's a document that is changing all the time. And there may be some things we want to just say, we're not going to do this, or
Just put a to be determined date.
or change, yeah, or
You
just
do
say, this is something that really isn't important now, kind of thing, and I can think of that with the ship store right away. I mean, I kind of think that that's a wish list kind of thing, but
Working document.
yeah, it's a working document.
I have it in Word and we plug and chug the dates and times as need be.
Well, and we have a new communication plan that I think we need to look through, as it pertains to us. So, member items and reports. I'm going to start because Chelsea,
Hold on, can you go back?
Yeah.
So you want to push this to your next meeting?
yes.
Okay.
Okay. Member items, reports. I wanted to start because in the email that Chelsea, I think everybody got it too. We're supposed to do a report to council due by the 28th. The meeting is October 5th,
Yes.
which I can be at. And I'm
Just the
willing to
history
do.
with that is internally, council has all of these advisory committees. So what we've done is coordinated amongst staff liaisons, when reports can be prepared and submitted with the council packet to council. So this is your turn in the merry-go-round. And then, of course, after 7 more, however many advisory committees later, you'll be providing them hopefully on a
And
regular
I do
schedule.
appreciate this year having this much time to do it, because in past, I've had like 2 days to do it or
the
something
club.
like that. Yep, I know, I'm speaking to the choir here. I made a couple notes. Obviously, I would talk about what we did today with the upland service provider, a little bit about what we did with our motion and where we are with that.
If we get the minutes back in time, I will try to get those distributed. That way you can have the verbatim motion
For the
before
28th.
28th.
That would be
I'll
really
ask.
great.
Um,
I have some notes and things about what we talked about today. And the expansion of the mooring field, where we are with that, but maybe you've already put that in your report to them.
I do a update monthly with them. It's under projects.
And talk about our strategic plan. Is there anything else you can think of? We've sort of been kind of in this, mostly talking about the upland service provider. That's kind of been our big thing. I know Chelsea gives them an update of a lot of those things.
One of the things that we do with, John Goggin, the chair of public safety, and what we've done recently, and it's really helping, especially with the reappointments and the changeover of council, is giving them the list of items that you all either have been tasked in the past and still working on, or new tasks, and just to make sure that that is the direction that they want you to continue working on. Again, we have a new council, and they may not have the same views as previous council, so just kind of giving them a brief update as to what you're working on. I did hear yesterday that I think that I don't know if this to be true, don't quote me, I heard this in Crab, I sat in for Crab yesterday, that I believe council, and Roxanne, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that council will be having a joint session with all of the chairs of the committees sometime in October.
I seem to remember that we pushed it a little later because we do reappointments and the chairs might change.
Okay,
So
that is forthcoming.
there is a plan to meet with the chairs, yes.
Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Your next meeting in October, I'll be sure to add reorganization on here. And I hope you all, those who were up for reappointment, had your applications, to
Are there any, applications for the vacancy?
my knowledge.
Now, they're no longer taking applications, but if there was not
We're,
one.
we're always
Always.
taking applications.
Always.
So if anybody knows somebody that would like to fill that vacant spot if we don't have one.
The word. I know Jenny has been pushing that on social media because I know
I've seen it in the paper too and
a
stuff.
lot of other committees have a lot of vacancies. So Crab, I know, has a lot of vacancies. I think Public Safety Committee has a couple reappointment, maybe one vacancy. All have one vacancy, so there's definitely a need for volunteers.
Okay, so those were the three things I had on my list, and I'll go back, like my report from last year. I always keep all those, and I was wondering about advertising. Are we doing advertising?
Is Southwind supposed to start again? October or November?
It can't start until after October.
That's right, because the money won't start, yeah. thought we
So we
already-
have money to do it.
Money
though.
was budgeted.
Okay,
Yes. But that is, again, up for discussion. Continue that or not. We might have alternative means. Jenny might have some ideas or thoughts. I put the money in there. If we choose to use it for South Winds or for a different advertising opportunity, so be it.
Maybe we'll get something extra from DACWA once we get added to their list. Would be, take along with them or supplement what they're already at.
that's pretty much all I had, though. I think we need to think about, since Cruisers Appreciation Day was canceled, in this world, we're not gonna have it, we wouldn't have it now, but we don't know what the world is gonna be like in April. I don't know if we wanna even think about it, but I'm just throwing it out there to think about for next time. Or where we stand, I don't know. Looks like it's probably not gonna happen next year either. But I don't know, so. Anyway, do you have an item? Mike? Ed? Bob? This was a big meeting. So, public comment, do we have any comment from our public? Thank you for sticking out with us for a couple hours, we appreciate it. We've set the agenda, you said you added on the reorganization.
I'm just on the strategic plan review. I'm gonna do a slash and say communication plan.
Right. I don't know if anybody looked through the new communication plan she sent out.
That was provided by our PIO,
Our
which
new
was
person.
distributed to the town council at the previous meeting. And I worked on that, on what I felt the need to be for the mooring field. And of course, things come up, as projects come up, things of that nature. Awesome to,
Was that in the communication plan that you sent out as far as what you guys talked about?
no.
That,
It was just, I think it was a huge matrix for her,
okay,
of her goals, because she has a lot.
yes. Okay, well, I just wondered, maybe you can give us a synopsis next time of kind of what she's gonna plan for us specifically. Because I know she's doing it for the whole town, but, you know. Anybody else?
Jennifer is very approachable. If any of you have ideas about things you'd like to ask her about or propose to her, as far as advertising or anything like that, send her an email.
I'll give you a perfect example. We've got a full-time position in maintenance right now, and we have had little to no success filling that vacancy. And I thought yesterday was, let's do a Facebook ad. I would have never thought of that. So, I mean, if there's something like that, like Roxanne said, send me an email, I can talk.
Jennifer's very approachable, so.
And I know you sent out an email a couple months ago now about maybe doing something once a month.
Yep, she's got a recurring schedule that she's.
Something about a boating thing or something like that, and I didn't respond to that.
Yeah, so with Public Safety Committee, what they've done is they provided 12 kind of tips and tricks, safety tips that they've done. And when I say short, I mean like a 2-sentence gist. Like wear sunscreen and like some funny comment to make. And he literally has just done a 1 a month, plugged that in. So if we can come up with 12 tips.
Boating tips of any kind.
Yeah. You know, hail on channel 16 or whatever. I mean, this is push for the mooring field and maritime community.
All right,
Next meeting date is October 21st.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Please. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Roxanne, for being here for this
Chelsea?
lengthy time. Jeez. Ooh, somebody's calling. Oh, it's an alarm.
Alarm, yeah.
Go on.
The table was the thing.
How you doing?